what you are seeing, whether it be on the LBMA or on the COMEX, is record bleeding down of supplies to where on the LBMA in the London vaults, it's the lowest level of silver since they've ever started recording inventories. And when you look at what's happening on COMEX, from silver squeeze to where we are right now, the drawdown has been extraordinary, and we're under 40 million ounces. We're very close to the all-time low.
Hi, I'm Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for October 25th through November 1st, 2022, while supplies last. This week we feature two silver specials. First, we have 90% silver at $11.49 over spot. Prized for its recognizability, liquidity, and easy divisibility, constitutional or junk silver is also in short supply. As Andy Schectman says, they're not making any more of it. Our 90% silver is mixed, meaning it may come as dimes, quarters, or both, but it has the same silver content either way and is available at $11.49 over spot while this batch lasts. Our second silver special is 100-ounce PAMP Swiss silver bars. Known for their quality and artistry, PAMP makes these IRA-eligible bars 3 nines fine and with their own individual serial numbers. They come 5 to a box and are available at only $4.59 over spot. Our number for all orders is 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always grateful to have this returning guest who is very popular with our viewers. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, and he joins us every Tuesday night for this weekly market update. Andy, thanks for joining us this October 25th, 2022.
Great to be here, my friend. Can you believe that there's only 8 or 9 of these weekly podcasts that we're going to do here left in the year? You know, we talk a lot about how fast things are spinning, how everything's time has been thrown into a giant blender. And, you know, where the heck did all the time go here in 2022? We're already staring at 2023. It blows me away, Don, again, but I look very forward to our Tuesday meetings, and I'm glad to be here. And as always, thanks for having me.
Well, I think in a very special way, we're not only glad to have you here, we're glad to be here. And that's the thing that comes to my mind the moment that you say how many Tuesdays we have between here and the end of the year is, will we be able to continue? I just got off an interview with Bill Holter where he was talking about we are at the end. It was a quote that he said. He's often a man of very few words, and he says things very succinctly. But he's talking about 17 days till we run out of diesel fuel in our country. And if the diesel stops, all the trucks stop, the trains stop, everything stops. And that would be just one example of a number of different potential things that could, just catastrophically disrupt our ability to carry on with life as usual, including our lovely Tuesday evening weekly market updates. So I'm especially grateful that we are here together this moment. So we'll do our very best to get the word out as best we can right now for people, and we'll be grateful for every opportunity we have going forward to do so. So anyway, thanks for being part of that.
Right on. And I agree. And I was with Bill yesterday on an interview where he said the same thing. And it's very concerning. You know, you're down to the very bare bottom on diesel fuel. We're at precariously low position in the strategic petroleum reserves. It seems a lot of the things that are happening are there's so many of them happening at once, you don't know where to focus. But certainly when we talk about supply chain problems and distortions in supply chains and deliverables, that would be at the very top of the list. And it's amazing just how much is moved by rail and by trucks that if you think it's tough right now getting product, you see a supply chain distortion as a result of running out of diesel fuel. I think it'll be unlike anything we've experienced over the last few years. So let's cross our fingers and hope that we find a way to resolve that. But certainly those 17 days coincide with the midterm elections. They coincide with the holiday season. It could be an interesting fourth or we're already in the fourth quarter, could be an interesting last few weeks of the year. And I use interesting as quote unquote interesting as for lack of a better definition. But yeah, it's concerning for sure.
Well, we've got some grandbabies being born in the other side of the country and contemplating traveling to visit, and having just returned from travel to Florida during a hurricane, it gives us great pause to think, are we going to be traveling across the entire country to see grandbabies, newborns, and try to be helpful at a time when we would best, when most people should be hunkering down if we're going to have these huge disruptions and potential volatility and who knows what that's coming. So it's got us scratching our heads.
Well, if I know your wife from the few times we've been together personally, I think if that were to happen, she'd probably pack a backpack and start walking tonight. So
probably.
So as any grandmother would. So congratulations to you on that. I hope that you're able to make it there, no problem at all. That's something that you got to just pick up and go for that.
Yeah, we hope so. I mean, what I mean is, it's a challenge to think in terms of when you look at these major disruptions, if there's no fuel or if there's no whatever, how many of our plans will need to be significantly adjusted if things are not as they were when we planned. So always having a plan B, we're trying to work on that right now.
It's so crazy, Dunnigan. You and I can have this conversation. I Bill and I talk every day, and to have these conversations amongst us or between you and Bill or whatnot seems very natural. Have this conversation with anyone else who's not involved in this industry or is not paying attention, and they'll look at you, with a cross-eyed, what? You're afraid of running out of fuel? These are things that are going to catch so many people by surprise. And I think it's emblematic of many of the things that we've been talking about for a long time is the holy unpreparedness of this country, because most of them, even the well-read people, are just reading the wrong things, and they're not following the right information and not paying attention to these types of massive shifts that could dramatically affect everything and everyone, and maybe nothing more so than a diesel fuel shortage where, trucks aren't delivering and trains aren't rolling. And, now you're talking real big problems in getting product to the end user, to the grocery store. And not only that, you add on the contraction of credit and the record amount of money in the reverse repo market where banks aren't lending. You have a slowdown of credit. You have a problem with diesel fuel. You're talking supply chain 101, that this is not good for the holiday season or for anything really in rectifying what has been distressed supply chains over the last few years.
Also, in talking about updates in major trends that we're watching that most people aren't, you've been talking to us for years and now months and now weeks with increasing focus on this de-dollarization of the world, the East-West split. And you said that there's some news worth relating about the progress with our relationship with Saudi Arabia, what's happening there, and what that implies strategically.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I've noticed that is very concerning is, once again, we're hearing of this no oil producing and exporting cartels, or NOPEC, NOPEC Act. And this is a bill that really has floated around for decades through, from Clinton to Obama and now even Trump and now Biden, where it opens the doors to anti-competitive lawsuits or antitrust lawsuits against OPEC and member countries, and it will be punishable by asset seizure. And the bill is considered a clear act of aggression. It removes all sovereign immunity. And this is because they decided to not pump more oil, and in fact decrease it. And we have senators who are calling that an open act of aggression. And not only are they asking to remove the Patriot missile defense system from the United Arab Emirates and from Saudi Arabia, which would only speed up and accelerate the break from the dollar as the single solo settlement currency for oil, but it would also, I think, incentivize a lot of other consequences, and kind of like the weaponizing of the dollar with the Russians. And now we're talking about weaponizing the dollar here with the Saudis. This is the type of behavior that is accelerating the de-dollarization, that is making countries like China for 7 going on 8 months in a row selling our bonds, because they're wondering, are we next? Well, Saudi Arabia, who has already last week publicly said they are going to join the BRICS nations, and that was affirmed by the president of South Africa and the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. They said, yes, we're joining the BRICS nations. So you have them breaking away from the West by joining the BRICS. And now, because they, in our idiocy, we shut down the Keystone Pipeline, make it difficult to be energy sufficient. So we figure we should beg Saudi Arabia and Venezuela for oil. And when they say no, we call it an act of aggression. It's craziness. And so to punish them, we pull away the security and the missile defense system, which is really what has been given us the dollar hegemony. The petrol reserve status was protecting Saudi Arabia and OPEC. And the moves that are being made by our administration is absolutely crazy. And I think that there's a high probability you'll see the Saudis begin dumping their U.S. holdings ahead of any potential seizure. And that'll drive down asset prices. It'll push interest rates higher. And I think you'll see other OPEC members do the same. Remember, all 13 OPEC members are on the Belt Road Initiative. And it's as if the choices that we are making are completely the wrong choices, but is it intended or not? When we start going down the weaponization path again of the world reserve currency, it's going to reinforce the movement away from the dollar that I think is a direct byproduct of kicking Russia out of SWIFT. And it's as if the hubris of these politicians is so extreme that either they're just idiotic by doing this, or it's intended. Is it a controlled demolition? I don't know, because sometimes you look at something and say it's just so absolutely ridiculous. Now, granted, this is a narrative that I have been following very closely, and I'm certainly intimately connected to, and I'm looking at it that way. But if our politicians aren't, then they're just not in a position to be making these types of declarations if they don't understand what the consequences can be. And you can see it by the pulling away of all of these countries from the possibility of them being the next on the chopping block. And I think that's what you're going to see here. So anyways, I think it just, I'm wondering when we're going to get that announcement from OPEC that they're going to stop taking payments only in US dollars altogether. And when that happens, I think everything that we've talked about takes a whole different turn, and things are going to get very interesting very quickly. But our politicians are not doing anything to slow that down. If anything, they're expediting the process by which this happens.
Yeah, I guess there's two things you said among all of that really stood out to me, and just to underscore them, not to add anything, but just to underscore them, and that is, you talked about, if these are acts of aggression as they're being accused against external actors, then what do you call what was happening by the leaders of our own country towards our own people? If shutting down our own domestic production of energy and depleting and draining our strategic petroleum reserve and all that, if other countries not coming to our aid and bailing us out of those actions is an act of aggression, then what was that original act that put our people in such peril? And then secondly,
an act of stupidity is what it was.
Well, that's the most charitable thing I think you could come up with. It may be a lot more sinister than that. When you look at shutting down of food plants, shutting down of diesel refineries, shutting down of so many things that are vital to the functioning of our society and of our country.
And then hiring 80,000 IRS officials to go after the small business, which for my whole career has been the engine of growth for the gross domestic product of this country. The decisions that are being made are so counter to what logic would dictate. And that's why a lot of people believe that this is a controlled demolition, that this is planned event to bring the West down, to level the playing field. I hope it's not, but that's why a lot of people do believe it, because you look at it and scratch your head and say, well, do they not understand what this really means? So, yeah, it's a scary time, no question about it. And again, the complete and total lack of anyone covering this in the mainstream is just shocking to me. We're beginning to see more people talk about it in our sphere, but I think, here again, things are certainly not looking good for our relationship with Saudi Arabia. And at some point, when the rubber meets the road, all of the dollars sloshing around lose their utility if they no longer need to be used to purchase oil. And that's when things start to get really frightening in this country.
That's the second point I wanted to follow up on and underscore what you had said earlier, and yet now you reiterated it. And Alistair McLeod, when we've interviewed him here, and he's going to be back in a couple of weeks, has talked to us about, in Austrian economics, or in understanding what the role of currency is versus real underlying money, is when people lose faith and confidence in their currency, and they'll start to do anything they can do to get rid of it because they realize it's a depleting asset. It's not going to have the purchasing power tomorrow that it has today. So just quick spend it today to get something real. Just get rid of that currency, get your hands on something real. That crack up boom of people dumping their currency and grabbing onto real things. What you're talking about with incentivizing Saudi Arabia or any of these countries to have reason to fear, are their dollars in their accounts and so on going to be weaponized against them by the U.S.? Maybe they should get out of that sooner than later, is, again, counterintuitive. It's like, how can that be good for our country to be incentivizing the abandonment of our own currency? That's
the point. And that's why the best I can come up with is it's stupidity. Or is it finding the villain, finding the boogeyman, and which is what I thought all along. As soon as I heard President Biden say that this is inflation because of Putin, I knew at that moment that it was all about finding a villain, finding the boogeyman. I mean, look, basic Austrian economics will tell you that money or inflation is always an increase in the money supply. You add into it a decrease in production, you have textbook inflation. Well, what the Federal Reserve and all the governments around the world have done in terms of money creation has nothing to do with Putin and his war. And you look at what inflation was doing leading up to the war, it was spiking to all-time highs. Or on its way to 40-year highs. So no, it's money creation. It's the Federal Reserve. It's the U.S. Treasury. Now you have our genius Janet Yellen talking about buying up the back end of the bond market because it has no liquidity, the 10-year and the 30-year. Because why would a 10-year and 30-year bond have liquidity? Why would anyone buy a 10-year and a 30-year earning less than a 2-year, which is over 4% right now, when you have inflation running 3 or 4 times that? Why lend money for 30 years that is well under the rate of inflation when you can lend it for 2 years and get more? So there's no liquidity on the back end of the bond market. And so what her genius idea is to go out into the market, buy up all of those bonds. Well, how does she do that? She does that by issuing new short-term debt instead of long-term. So she's going to issue treasuries to buy treasuries. And it's really quite idiotic as far as I'm concerned. It's a full-on modern monetary theory. And it's the exact same way that they were able to buy back $15 trillion in bonds last year by issuing new bonds. It's paying off your Visa card with a new MasterCard. And we are at that period of time where, as rates continue to rise, that the ability to finance this becomes impossible. And, with a $30 trillion debt at 4% interest, that's $1.2 trillion in bond payment, just in interest payments alone. So yeah, I think that this is a situation that is becoming quickly unmanageable. For those people who are paying attention to this escalating drama of instability, they're increasingly uncomfortable with keeping their assets or their nest eggs in the banking system, for one, because the banking system, as we saw back in 2008, 2009, is connected to the overall debt market, to the brokerages and everything, and
a systemic shock anywhere in there or a lockup anywhere in there can affect all of the participants. In the interview I just did with Bill Holter, he was talking about his observation as a precious metals dealer and as an analyst of the markets of the increased anxiousness on people who are paying attention. They're not wanting to maybe go one more day with their significant amount of savings or cash in the banking system and wanting to get that out and into real assets. Your personal observations or any data that you have in your research that's demonstrating that phenomenon taking place as far as people losing confidence in the banking system?
Well, I think you can take it a step further and go up a notch and look at what's happening right now on a step above where we play, and that would be the LBMA and the COMEX. In the month of September, the LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, their vaults in London delivered. Now that means they lost. So it was delivered off the exchange over 45,166,000 ounces of silver. And that is more than the entire registered category of the COMEX. The registered category is the bars, or are the bars that are eligible for delivery, which are now under 48 million ounces, 38 million. The country of India took possession in the month of August of about 37 million ounces of silver. 1 month's delivery to India, or 1 month's delivery off the LBMA, is 8 million ounces more than the COMEX has, backing the entire price-setting mechanism of the world. If you take all of the bars that are in the COMEX, all of them, which would be the eligible, which are bars that are held by ETFs, by strong hands, by companies, by family offices, by anyone who's leaving it to be stored in a COMEX vault. If you take all of that, the open interest, meaning the number of contracts that could say, well, I want this to be delivered right now, is equal to 226% of all the vaulted silver. And if you just look at the registered silver, those bars that are pledged to be delivered if requested, the open interest is 1,800% of the registered silver. So if everyone in the registered category or everyone who has these bars wanted delivery of the bars, and that would be the registered category, 1 out of 18 people would get their silver and everyone else would be cash settled. This is a situation that really can't last if you're talking about the epicenter of price discovery for the world in precious metals. And so what you are seeing, whether it be on the LBMA or on the COMEX, is record bleeding down of supplies to where on the LBMA in the London vaults, it's the lowest level of silver since they've ever started recording inventories. And when you look at what's happening on COMEX, from silver squeeze to where we are right now, the drawdown has been extraordinary, and we're under 40 million ounces. We're very close to the all-time low, which I think is about 20 million ounces. We're at 38 right now. But look, if you realize that, in 1 month, 45 million ounces was delivered off the LBMA, what does that say for the amount of silver backing the COMEX? It's a very concerning situation. And so I think whether you're talking the retail investor who is scared leaving their money in the bank, or the highest up investor, the most sophisticated investors, the most well-informed investors, the one closest to the information, well, they're afraid to leave their metal for 1 second longer in the vaults, in the system, and they're pulling it out, where last week in 1 day, 5% of all the good delivery gold bars were delivered off the COMEX in 1 day. And last month, 45% of all the mini contract bars on COMEX, the kilo bars, over 25 million ounces delivered in 1 day. Who's got this kind of money? And if price is a reflection of demand, then where is all this metal going? And why are the most well-funded and well-informed traders on the planet systematically draining the stockpiles from the top on down? And of course, when you get to the wholesale market, which we've talked about the last few weeks, into the retail market, I've never seen anything like it. It's literally systematically disappearing, and I show zero sign of it letting up. This is what I have been talking about. The frightening thing about it is that in my mind's eye, what I have talked about on your show about product disappearing continually and the industry being defined by a lack of supply is when the public at large has an aha moment. And we're not there yet. So this is disappearing before the aha moment. And that tells me that the smart money, the big money who understands the dilemma that faces the dollar in this economy, is doing what they can to position themselves before that aha moment happens. And so, yeah, it's real, and it's concerning.
The other thing we've been seeing is runaway premiums on just about everything. It's been just astonishing. Those who've been stacking metals for years and years, sometimes decades, I've spoken with people, and they'll say, I never pay more than $2 over spot or whatever it is, and I haven't for decades or whatever. But we've seen since the beginning of COVID, almost without let up, complete breakaway of premiums and physical prices rising above the paper price. In some cases, it's so extreme. I mean, we did a hot news announcement about 3 months ago, right after the Sprott conference, where we were saying record high buybacks for swaps on Silver Eagles. I think it was 10 and a quarter at the time. Now we're $12 over on buybacks for Silver Eagles. None of us have seen this before. Can you talk to us about the phenomenon with premiums just completely separating the physical metal market from the spot price?
But what's more concerning to me is how it's now transitioned to gold. And I talked about that when the Mint came to me in July and said, we're going to curtail production of gold by 50%. And I couldn't understand why the heck they were going to do that, because everyone's been buying silver. You're beginning to see it in gold as well. And it's a reflection of supply and demand, wholly and completely and totally a reflection of supply and demand. And the bottom line is that there is far more demand for physical refined product than there is supply, and those premiums are a direct reflection of that. And you're right, they haven't let up. And one of the unique things about this environment is that any time I've seen these distortions in price, they typically resolve themselves with, not much more than a few weeks or a few months. We're going on 3 years where it hasn't. And in fact, it's only gotten tougher. And if you're a company like mine, if you're not one of the 4 or 5 major precious metals companies who has the ability to buy $10 million worth of product from the distributors and pay immediately, they're not even going to call you when there's product available. You're going to wake up one morning and there was a release of product and it's gone, because the bigger players who pay quickly and have the ability to write out large checks are getting all the product, and everyone else is fighting for the scraps. We've talked about how the fact that no one sells us anything right now, even with these high premiums, I don't see anyone selling anything by and large. And so the secondary market is void of product, and the mints are struggling to keep up. The refiners are struggling to keep up. Half of them are in Europe and are wondering how they're going to keep the lights on over the winter. And so this is a situation that I don't see getting better anytime soon. In fact, I see it getting worse because we haven't had the aha moment yet. And we will have that aha moment. We're going to have the market correction. We're going to have a collapse of some sort at some point. We have to. And when that happens and people are looking for an alternative, a place to put their money safely, I think they're out of luck at that point. If the market continues to behave in terms of supply the way it is. Now you add into it supply chain issues in terms of trucking and transportation. When we buy stuff from the Perth Mint, when we buy stuff from the British UK Mint or Austria or Australia, or the United Kingdom, that's all coming. I don't know if they use diesel fuel in ships. I'm assuming they do. The trucks that drive across the country to our vault, well, those are all diesel. And supply chains problems are not, precious metals are not immune to those supply chain problems either. So yeah, this is all a big jumbled mess that you try to figure it out. And I try to say this stuff, it's hard to talk to the public and say supply's running out, you better hurry up, without it sounding like salesmanship. I'm glad that you've been in this long enough to know that that's not the case, and you can validate it for me. And okay, all I can tell you is that I still see people that are waiting for this pullback in silver. They're out of their mind. People tell me all the time, I'm waiting for that one big pullback in silver before I jump in. I will promise you, I will promise you there will be nothing for you to get. And, I talked to my operations today, and he's buying kangaroos that are now 60 days out into 2023. We're paying for them now, and we're running logistics on it for the next 60 days. By the time it gets in our warehouse, it'll all be sold, pre-sold. So that's what it's come to. I've talked about this before, but you're talking 45 to 60 days out on most of the sovereign items that we're ordering into 2023, and it's disconcerting to say the least.
Australian economist John Adams, who we've had on several times, has done an extensive analysis of the overall material flow within the silver supply chain, from mining, refining, smelting, wholesaling, and everything, and talked about strain points in the physical market, including the exchanges, et cetera. But he's talked about that when there are shortages on the exchanges, the solution for shortages, that there's plenty of metal available in most cases on most commodities if you write up the price curve appropriately. That's just a mathematical function. If you get tight enough on supply, you ride up the price curve until the supply breaks free and people are willing to let go of their and sell back at higher prices. In this case, you've talked to us in the past about there's the human psychology aspect of that may run counter to that. It's not like any other tradable item that people are willing to let go of if they can flip it for a profit.
Yeah, because the higher the price goes speaks to the motivation people employed for owning it to begin with. Most of the people that I talk to are not buying gold and silver to get wealthy. They're buying gold and silver because they believe that the dollar is in trouble and the markets are in trouble, and that it's about return of your money more than return on your money. And so most people that I would talk to would have no interest whatsoever in selling when it doubles in price any more than they are in selling if it loses 40% of its value. And they understand the dynamics of what's going on. This is a high stakes game. There's a lot of players involved in that are trying to mitigate the rise of the price, because what it signals about the Western economy and about the currencies. But what gives me optimism that we're on the right path in making a statement like that is that if price was determinant of demand, then not only in this industry, forget about the retail, why are the biggest exchanges in the world being bled dry of their supply? The people who have the wherewithal and the ability to drain COMEX, drain the LBMA, the authorized participants who have taken over 100 million ounces out of SLV, the record high premiums in Shanghai and Dubai. You're talking the smartest money in the world is accumulating gold and silver. And as I've said before, classic misdirection. They are using the cover of suppressed prices to do so. And it's very obvious if you're watching. The problem is most people only see the price. I play golf here on Saturdays with a very, very successful money manager. And he's managing over $1 billion. And he says the same thing to me every time. Well, with 40-year high inflation in this crazy world we live in, gold is doing nothing, and neither is silver. And that's all he sees. He's a very well-educated, successful money manager. And gold and silver are just off the radar. All he sees is the price. And he's missing so much of the reason that the price is down, and he's missing the whole reason why you need to own gold and silver, which is emblematic of most of the people in this country that will be completely caught off guard. And on top of that, when you talk about record high inflation, just read something from the Social Security Administration that more than 62% of everyone in the United States made less than $50,000 last year. 52% made less than $40,000 last year. 41% made less than $30,000, and 30% of every American made less than $20,000. And with salaries and wages not rising with the cost of living and all of this craziness that is happening around us, this country is ill prepared for what's coming down the pike. And even the money managers and the quote unquote sophisticated, educated finance guys and gals, most of them, because of the suppression of price, have never taken a close look under the hood. Why is it suppressed? How is it suppressed? And what does it mean? And I think that's really the thing that I take away from this, is that most people, and this is what I talk about the elephant. We are the little pimple on the back of the elephant. The elephant doesn't notice anything yet. Yeah, they see inflation and they see war, but everything will be okay like it's always been. And if it's not, whether you're talking about people having no savings, people with money all being piled into equities and bonds, look, when you talk about valuations, the Fed's balance sheet has grown from 800 billion to 9 trillion. It's all an illusion. And when interest rates and valuations, prices find equilibrium, it's going to be a religious experience for a lot of people. You throw in supply chains problems, massive inflation, unemployment, on and on and on. And look at all you see when you turn on the news every day is anger and fights and shootings and beatings. And I can't even watch the news anymore. My son lives in Manhattan, took a job at Price Waterhouse, and I hate every time I see what's going on the subways in New York. I can't even watch it. This is the divisiveness that we're seeing, and the divisiveness you watch every time you turn on the news. You see how our president is calling people who supported President Trump radical and ultra MAGA, whatever he's calling it, and this divisiveness between vaccination and non-vaccination, between blue and red and black and white and rich and poor, and it's just getting too much. And I think something's got to break. And the scary part about it is it's not just financial, it's the whole moral social fabric is ill prepared. We have no unity. The people that I used to talk to when I started in this industry, the World War II vets who worked their fingers to the bone, lived through the Depression, were completely patriotic. Their word meant everything. They were educated and they believed in God, and they believed in freedom and liberty, and would have died, as many of these young kids at 18 years old on Normandy Beach did. They died for this country and would do so in a moment. That mentality, that type of moral fabric has been disintegrated. And I think if times get very tough, this is really important that people take a step back and think about all of this together. What happens if some of these things really do happen, and why it's so important to prepare on many different levels, and spiritually, religiously, all of the things that go along with living your day-to-day life. It's just as important to get yourself right there also. And this is a bigger picture that concerns me more and more and more, because, it's like, why did Social Security Administration and the IRS load up on AR-15s and .223 ammunition if they're not expecting something when the dam breaks? And I think the dam's going to break, and I think people need to prepare right now. And the worst part about it is that by the time people wake up to prepare, there's a good chance that what they would prepare with will be crumbs, if at all.
Yeah, when we interviewed Mike Adams on our channel, also known as the Health Ranger, he talked about a 1-year diversion of storable and emergency food mandated by the federal government to federal agencies rather than to consumers. So there's many examples where the kinds of supplies, whether it's weapons, whether it's food, whether it's whatever is fuel, et cetera, that's necessary, has been diverted away from the population to concentrated hands. And that doesn't, when that's happened in the past, in history, it hasn't ended well for the ordinary people. In the face of that, you've been kind of the opposite, kind of the Johnny Appleseed, trying to make sure you get things into the hands of as many people as possible. G.K. Chesterton, early 20th century author, would have approved of that. It's called distributism, making sure that people have access in a distributed fashion to the things that they need to keep their families healthy and viable, so they can survive and thrive. You scour and scrub the market trying to find things that we can offer on a weekly special. It's been more and more challenging, I understand, and you were able to come up with something this week for us?
Yeah, I have, and you're right. It's really hard. I mean, was able to buy 40 or 50 bags, and they call it junk silver. It's no longer junk at $11.49 an ounce over the price of silver. It's far from junk, but it is the most utilitarian form of silver you can own, where 14 dimes equal almost 1 ounce of silver, almost exactly, where a 1 ounce silver coin gives you one transaction, where 14 dimes give you 14 transactions. God forbid we ever have to use it, but it is a very popular form. My whole career, it was called junk. Now I prefer to call it constitutional silver. It's really hard to get. It's as rare as hen's teeth. I have to bid extraordinarily high to pry it out of the hands of the people that are willing to sell it. And 40 bags, I mean, normally on any given day we would have 40 bags in stock. Now 40 bags is a prized possession that'll go very quickly. But we do have it in any quantity at $11.49 over while supplies last. And supplies aren't lasting very long when we do these specials. The challenge for me is getting them and hiding them from my staff and not telling them about it until this releases on Tuesday night, because by the time it's released, oftentimes they're gone. So surprise to my staff, we have some bags of junk silver that will be released this evening at $11.49 over spot. And then we have the Pamp Swiss 100-ounce bars at $4.59 over. These are the class of the bar community, PAMP, Paul, Andrew, Mary, Paul. These from maybe the most respected refinery in the world. These 100-ounce bars are, again, a prized possession, because PAMP told us that after this, they're not taking any orders until January because, again, they are concerned about being able to keep the lights on and produce product over the long, cold winter with what's going on with natural gas and energy issues throughout Europe. So these are the PAMP bars in particular. To me, are special. They're my favorite 100-ounce bars, and those are the Royal Canadian Mint. The Royal Canadian Mint bars right now are priced higher than these because I have these on special. So if you're looking for value, it's here. If you're looking for utility, it's in the junk silver. But honestly, it's becoming much harder to do this. And I'll continue to do it as long as I can to try and make a special, but it's getting tougher.
We always are grateful for that, Andy, and I'm grateful, as we mentioned way back at the beginning, that we can even be here together this week. Let's hope that we're able to continue doing this. As you've said often, and it's echoing in my heart, is I hope I'm wrong. I'm afraid I'm right. I remember Rob Kirby often said that when we were signing off, and rest his soul.
God bless.
We're all in debt to him for the unabashed view that he took of things, making sure he was standing up for ordinary people. You're in that camp as well, standing up for ordinary people, and we're trying to as well. So people, I meant to say this in the beginning, each and every person who's watching this, you've been here, some of you maybe your first time, some of you have been here for a year, since way back in the beginning when we were called Reluctant Preppers. But one thing you're doing is increasing your own education, your own awareness. Most of you, I know, are spreading the word to friends, family members, coworkers, etc. By clicking like and subscribe and forwarding this to as many people as you can. We're all doing what we can do to try to get the word out so that people aren't caught unawares. And we really appreciate each and every one of you being here. And we're here for you. We're here because of you. And we're trying to help. So help each other. And thank you for being here. By your presence here, you're helping us as well. Andy, President and CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, always appreciate your visits here with us every Tuesday night. And thank you for joining us again on Liberty and Finance.
Pleasure is mine. Look forward to seeing you next week. Stay well, you and everyone else out there. Until next time, look forward to picking up where we left off.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we will let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be double boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Elijah, my brother Kaiser, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.